Alrighty, already. Y'all can hear me okay? Awesome, cool. I'm gonna try to, if y'all see me looking to the side, it's only because I'm making sure people are getting admitted, but I'm happy that y'all are here. We're really excited. I have an amazing panel of some Theramon friends and my own husband slash papa here. So I'm hoping that it helps y'all out a little bit. So we're gonna just jump straight in, first with intentions and then disclaimers, and then we'll get the guest panel to introduce themselves. So first, this is going to be very intro. So as y'all may know, like mental health and wellness, the journey is like once you start with one piece, you realize there's this piece and there's that piece. So we cannot go over everything. It's really just going to be a brief intro just to get you started. But we are going to be giving examples of things that either that we have gone through or experienced and that we've seen with our own clients and people that we know. So there's that. Then the next intention is just to provide you some direction. Like, what is your next baby step? I literally told my husband earlier today, we cannot break all the cycles overnight, right? So that's not what we're trying to do, is just to help you figure out what's your one baby step towards moving towards alignment, what matters most to you, and how you're going to be well in these times. Because it's sometimes right now. And then to encourage and validate, right? Just to let you know that whatever you're going through is valid. It's your experience. So happy that you're here. And then some other little logistics is that we will be sending any links and resources along with the slide deck to y'all on Monday. It'll be like 15-ish minutes overview, very brief, about 25-minute panel, 2 questions, and then resources and a raffle at the end. We are asking that you stay muted just because it's going to be mostly information for this one at least. And then throughout this presentation, class, just know that we are not here acting as your mental health or financial professionals. We're here talking to y'all as parents who happen to have these passions, right? And then we want to bring them to y'all. We will be recording, so we're recording, and sections of this, potentially all, will be uploaded onto the YouTube channel just for anyone who wasn't able to attend. But we will stop recording right before the raffle. All right. If y'all have any questions at all, make sure to pop them in the chats. But we're just gonna go ahead and get started with intros. I'll go first just to rip the band-aid. My name is Joanna Lee. I'm a first-gen Chicana licensed therapist here from San Diego. I am a mama to an amazing 14-month-old with my husband. She's a firecracker, and her name actually means ready for battle. So I actually got really happy about that recently because I was like, yeah, girl, we got this. And I started Millennial Theramom and like this content stuff when I was about 3 months postpartum because I felt like there was such a gap in accessible services that represented all of us. So I'm really happy that y'all are here. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it over to Crystal.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Crystal Flores. I am a licensed psychologist, a mom of 2, also Chicana, and I'm like Gen 1.5. My mom is an immigrant. My dad was born here. And I have several moving parts to my work. I have my online presence as a shapeshifting mama, aka Doc, if you've ever seen me on there. Um, and, and I also work for a clinic, and we specialize in working with male survivors of trauma. But I also have a variety of other clients that I've just been working with for years, or that have just hit me up. Since becoming a mom 6 years ago, so I have 2 littles, 6 years old and 3 years old. Parenthood has definitely come to the forefront, and it's become a big a passion of mine to discuss within therapy, right? Because it's like I can bring in my own life experience. Super excited to be here. Really grateful for Joanna and the community that we're building, because I feel like a lot of what we talk about and the work we do is rooted in the same values. Passing the baton to Ashley.
Thank you, Crystal. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Lee, and I'm also a Latina. Also 1.5. My mom immigrated here, and my dad was also born here. So thank you for having me. I also wear many hats. I'm a therapist, and I work with folks going through the perinatal period, both, trying to conceive pregnancy all throughout it, and then postpartum, as well as working with anxiety and OCD and trauma. And I love couples. I love doing that work. And I've also found room to combine two loves, which is moving your body in a way that feels good for you, free from diet culture and all the pressures that we all take in all day, every day. Um, and having a therapeutic lens. So, mindful movement coach as well, where I'm sort of putting those two things together, where I help you move your body with intention and also try to rid yourself of all of those pressures that we face, especially as moms trying to bounce back. And I have two kiddos too. I have an almost 4 year old. Oh, went by so fast. And a 1.5 year old. So thank you so much for having me here. I look forward to today.
Lewis.
Right. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. My name is Lewis Lee. My lovely wife, Joanna, was kind enough to invite me as a panel member to this event here. I am a licensed financial professional, and that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but ultimately, I have the privilege and pleasure of being able to teach people about money, how money works, and essentially help them actually navigate through their financial journey, whether it's with retirement solutions, insurance solutions, or just overall financial wellness. But it all starts with the literacy and education aspect of it. So, with that, we get to do a lot of great things. We get to interact with people from all over. We have courses and solutions for individuals, families, and businesses. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and particularly in the frame of mental health and new parents. It's a big hurdle, right, that a lot of people face, and I think we'll dive into that later on here in this presentation and panel. But definitely excited to be here and looking forward to it. Thank you.
He's also a great papa. You forgot to mention. And our daughter looked like 95% like him. So
That's right. That's right. That's right. 14 months old, keeping us plenty busy. And now we get to chase a walking, talking baby. Just
yes.
add it to the mix. So, so much more fun.
It is fun. It is fun. Awesome. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. Thank you for being part of this panel with me. And thank you all for being here. I know that an hour of your time is precious. So going to try to, like I mentioned, very briefly overview some areas of wellness. Honestly, a lot of this stuff has come from my own like journaling, podcasts, books. I'm an introvert. Hard to tell sometimes, but like I really thrive when I'm like inside my brain and inside my heart trying to figure out what the heck is happening, and then realizing like, oh, I wonder if anybody else is potentially going through this. Let me share it. And that's kind of how Millennial Thermom started. So again, it's this stuff. I hope that it applies, but also it's pick what fits, what doesn't, let it go. It's your journey, right? So in my own reflections and my own kind of experience as a therapist, as a mom, I've found six-ish areas, and I like to use the word ish because I'm working on flexibility and openness. And these six-ish areas are mental, physical, spiritual, relational, financial, and daily life. You might see different terms when people talk about holistic wellness, and I think that that's fine. This is just what ended up working for me. Sometimes people will have a vocational or a work or a school area, and that's kind of what I'm throwing into the daily life, especially as what I call, I'm a stay-at-home-ish mom. So most of the week I'm at home with my daughter, and then about 10 hours a week I have a sitter, and that's when I do a lot of this stuff. So as a stay-at-home-ish mom, my daily life looks different. Like it's not always 8 to 5. Sometimes it's this to this, and finding routine and balance and all that. So feel free to borrow it, take it if it applies. But I'll jump into very briefly each of these areas and some questions to consider. Okay, this is not like what's going to be on dictionary.com. It's kind of like how I conceptualize this. All right. So for the mental, it's kind of asking yourself, how is your mind? How do you cope with stress and triggers? Okay, we're going to keep it real basic. For physical, how's your body? Your strength, your stamina, bodily organ, whatever you want to include into like how you move. Are you cracking all the time? Do you always have a headache? That kind of stuff. Spiritual is how is your heart? So I know like I'm not here to tell everybody you need to believe in this faith, but I do feel like paying attention to what's in your heart. Like in my own church, they call it your heart posture, right? Like, are we out here being like everybody is the worst and I'm angry all the time? Like, I think that's spiritual, right? Or we're like, you know what? Life is kind of tough, but I have a calling. I have something that moves me. I call that spiritual. So for everybody, that might look different. So that's kind of like what I'm putting into that category. Relational, how are your relationships? I heard this quote that said the quality of your relationships is the quality of your life. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, dang, how are my relationships? As an introvert, as I mentioned, sometimes I get overwhelmed with like, I haven't hit up this person, I haven't hit up that person, and then I don't hit up anybody. Right. So it's like for me, it's being intentional, like, okay, maybe it just means reaching out to my mom and seeing if she can come, reaching out to my sister and just checking in, reaching out to whoever, right? So if you're a friend of mine on here, know that I'm taking it baby steps, but that's kind of like how are your relationships and the quality of your connections. Is it always surface level? Like, can you only say I'm good? Or like, can you actually say how you're really feeling, right? So there's different relationships that can cover different needs. That's one way to think about it. Financial, kind of like have my husband mention, like how are your finances? Are we like I like the stress, the fight, flight, freeze response. Fight, flight, freeze, or are we facing our finances? Do we have an education about it? Do we have awareness? Do we have a plan? Or are we avoiding it? And I'm not gonna lie, like before I got married, I wasn't really looking at my finances and my retirement and my all that stuff because it caused me a lot of stress. And I was like, you know what? No. And then we got married and was like, I guess we have to talk about money. And I noticed I would get triggered and I want to shut down. I was like, oops, I guess I have some money stuff I got to work through. My bad. He can attest to it. Some of those initial conversations weren't pretty, but they were necessary. So that's kind of like part of your financial wellness. And again, we're not here to shame anybody. This is like real life. And then daily life, like when you think about your day-to-day rhythms, does it always feel like it's just chaos and all day long? Or does it feel like, you know what, there's some chaos, but I tend to be able to fill my cup here in the morning with my little face wash, and then I take a little break here. There's some flow to it, or is it always chaotic? And again, I came to this place because I was feeling like, wow, there's a lot of things to do, and I don't know when I'm supposed to do them, and that would overwhelm me, right? So for me, creating rhythms and systems and little routines has been really, really helpful. And for you, it will look different. So those are the general areas and some general, again, things that can impact those areas, those first few years in parenthood, especially, I mean, I only have one daughter, right? So I think all of this I'm sharing as a mama of one. So I don't know what it feels like to have multiples, but currently with my one, these first couple of years, some things that have popped to mind as what could impact your health in these areas. So first, your mental health. I don't know how many of y'all have heard about PMADs, but they're perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And basically, whenever you hear postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, that goes under that umbrella. But there's also postpartum psychosis, postpartum bipolar. There's another one, OCD, postpartum OCD, which Ashlei has great training in. So just shout out. There's a specific training for that can be helpful. That is all impacted, and there's very, very many factors that can impact postpartum diagnoses. Part of it, I think, is systemic. We live in a country where at your 6 weeks first of all, 6 weeks postpartum, that's when you have your first visit. And it's mostly, in my experience, focused on birth control and exercise and sex. But the question around how are we coping with this transition? How are we asking help? Are we receiving help? It's not as prominent. And I think sometimes people, they have good intentions, but if you say something like, I'm struggling a little bit, they might say, well, at least your baby is good, right? And though that's like, yes, I am grateful my baby is good. And I'm kind of struggling or I don't know what I'm going through, right? Like that can impact people. So that's just one piece. Another piece could be the hormones, the big shifts, the lack of sleep, all of that stuff. So just know that that's one area. There's also this cool term that I learned called matrescence, and there is the equivalent of putrescence, which is just the shift of becoming a new parent. Just like adolescence, that was weird and wonky, and there was hormones and like, leave me alone. Like that also could happen in your matrescence and putrescence, this shift in identity. Who am I? What matters most? There's mixed emotions. Maybe you're grateful, but you're exhausted. Maybe you're overwhelmed, but still in love, right? Like that roller coaster is real. You shouldn't feel bad about having a roller coaster of emotions. There's also a lot of expectations and pressures, especially raising kids in this time and age when there's so much information about this is the right way. It can leave you feeling like, oh, if I don't do it like that, I'm not raising my kid in the right way. One example from the very beginning for us was formula. I was like fighting to try to breastfeed, fighting to try to pump. And eventually it was like, I need to let this go. Like my baby's going to be okay if we give her formula, right? But that little shift, that wasn't, the expectation and the reality were so different. Then stress, burnout usually happens when there's more, what is it, when the capacity that we currently have can't hold all the stressors and moving pieces in our lives. So maybe you don't have enough support, or that's internally, we don't have enough time to decompress, or there's just too many responsibilities. Like we can go towards burnout road. And then one random one that I threw in there was like return to work or not, because that was one thing that happened for me. I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to go back. And again, these are all interconnected. I did want to shout that out because like with my mental health, right, like about wanting to return to work, then that became the real financial questions. Like, hey, how are we going to figure this out? Like, if I don't go back to work, how are we going to afford rent? But I really don't want to go back, right? And so it's all connected. Some physical things that could be impact is again a lot of hormone shifts and change, like those 2 weeks postpartum. It's kind of an influx and just a wave of hormones leaving your body, starting to get produced in your body because you're feeding a baby or because you're just attaching to your baby more. So these hormones also impact you. Your changes in your body, I know like Ashley had mentioned, there's just like a lot of language around bounce back that is kind of toxic sometimes, right? But it's so ingrained into our culture because we see celebrities who just had a baby and they bounce back and everyone's like, wow, look at them. But that's not necessarily the standard that we need to be holding ourselves to for wellness. So it's there's that piece of like, how do I learn to accept my body for what it is now, and what it can do, right? Maybe not being able to move as consistently. Like I know my husband and I used to love to go to the gym together pre-baby. And once we had a baby, we're like, oh snap. You know the Spider-Man meme? Like, who gonna stay with the baby? Like you or me. So we're not able to move as much. And then did I feed myself? This literally happens to me all the time. I'm like, I think I'm hungry, right? And it's because you're constantly meeting the needs of a little being that you might even forget to feed yourself. So that's real. Spiritual, you might be questioning like your current season's purpose or call. You might feel disconnected from yourself or even your child. You might be feeling a little numbness, maybe a little like rage at like the lack of support or whatever it might be. Again, all those things that impact like your heart posture. I call it spiritual. Difficulty finding peace, not being able to have those moments of rest. Those could be some things. I'm gonna make sure to speed it up a little bit for the sake of time, but relational, new relationship dynamics, different priorities. Maybe you feel like a roommate to your partner. You know, they used to be so close, but now you're like, don't look at me. Like it's your shift. I'll talk to you in the morning, right? Especially in the middle of the night. Not the best time to have a conversation. New boundaries. Parenting while being parented, right? Is like, don't tell me what to do, but like, but how do you do this? Yeah. Financial, baby stuff adds up, all the little things, all the diapers and the formula. Maybe you want to set up a solid financial future. I know like when my husband mentioned like setting money aside for my child's like future education. I was like, that's a thing that people do, huh? Because I, like the first gen, I didn't know that that's something we could do. But now we're like, yeah, we do want to put money aside for her in the future. And lack of literacy. Maybe we weren't taught this stuff, or we weren't modeled it, so we don't really even know where to start. And daily life, so constantly changing schedules and routines. That toddler, that first year, those first years, it's like, oh, you used to sleep this long, now it's this long, and now, it's just always moving. Where did the time go? And again, priorities shift. So what can help? Again, this is the intro. So many things, I don't know if the visual pops up, but many things can help, but it's going to be unique to your own mental, physical, etc. needs. The next slide is going to have a lot of words on this. I do apologize for that, but I wanted just like a quick one spot for y'all to see some examples. And again, it's going to be shared with you on Monday. So slowing down and resting, this is a practice. We need to learn how to slow down and rest because it's a necessity, not a luxury. Flexibility, acceptance, mindfulness, and self-compassion. I call it FAMS, like we need to have FAMS. I actually did a video for my YouTube that'll be released on Friday, but learning how to let go of control, go with the flow, be kind to yourself on this learning curve. Yeah, I tried to resist that, and I realized like, okay, I'm holding on too tight. I need to let go a little bit. Maybe she didn't nap an hour like I wanted to, but it's okay. Like it's not the end of the world. Little things like that. Try to meet your basic needs as often as possible. There are some things that are out of our control, right? We don't know how long our babies will sleep certain days, but if we know that, okay, I nourish myself, I try to move my body, I try to sleep when possible, like that kind of stuff, it does add up. There's actually a workbook that I had created that I'll send with y'all. It's called the NEST, like NESTS, and it goes through nutrition, exercise, sleep, time for self, and support. And I think it's a really good starter. If you're like, I don't even know where to start, I think that's a good place to start. Basic needs. Receiving help, building real relationships, setting values-based intentions and habits. So this is one that I'm really, really like advocating for now. And it's the workbook I just sent, because we can say like, I want to go to the gym, right? But asking yourself why? Why do you want to go to the gym? Is it to look good for somebody else? Because that's probably not going to stick. And if anything, you might feel some shame around that. Or is it because you want to be able to chase your toddler around and have adventures and memories and feel good and nourish yourself so that you can live a long time, right? Like, why do you want to do these? What's most important? Prioritizing it because you can't do it all. Continuing to learn, you're here. So that's great. I also have a document where I put some books and podcasts, because that's how I learned mostly. Continue to build your stress management skills. So big transitions are stressful. And just because something is stressful doesn't mean it's like negative or it's and like you didn't want it, right? Moves, weddings, like new marriages, relationships, they can be stressful. And that's okay, because stress can grow you, right? But it's like learning, how do I pour into myself so that I can manage the stress? Is it I'm making sure I'm breathing, I'm pausing, I'm moving, I'm being aware of how I'm feeling? Is it my spiritual practices, quiet time, creating, playing, cooking, music, thinking about your thinking, right? Being like, hey, wait a minute, what am I telling myself right now about this? So those are just some things. Therapy could be great. If you're there, definitely recommend. If you're not, it's okay. Take your baby step. And that was a nice one. Take your baby steps for wellness. So prioritize. You can't do it all. Everything can be a priority. So figure out what is your couple of things you want to move towards, and schedule it, because if you know, the time just disappears and you're like, where the heck did that go? So you need to put it in your calendar or somewhere and make it visible. So again, like whether that's I put my gym clothes out the day before, I have a little care caddy where I put all my books and essentials, real shorts, real story, my recent YouTube video. But yeah, so like I said, everyone is unique. So, and so is your next small step. So just make sure that as we have these conversations, as you hear what the guest panels have to say, just think about like, what is your baby step? All right. So I'm going to go ahead. The first question for our panel is going to be, in your experience, what are some of the biggest factors that impacted your or your clients' mental health and wellness those first couple of years of parenthood? So I'm just going to go in order of who's on my screen for now. So Ashlei, could you go first?
Yes, I will say one of the biggest factors is probably support and or community. I think that going through, trying to conceive, then, being pregnant and all of that, a lot of the times there's a lot of excitement, in the beginning, or just not sure how you're going to manage, right? So it could be any of those things. And then, of course, we would love to see the belly and everything like that. And then the big shift that once baby's here, that a lot of the focus becomes on baby. And I think to what you were speaking about is just, that new identity and like what to do with that, and how to talk openly with people about what it is that you are experiencing is really hard. Now, I will say I definitely had the privilege of already being a therapist and knowing some of the hurdles that we go through. So I was able to kind of set myself up a little differently, and having therapy all throughout pregnancy as well as after, and having a support group, right? Having the practice of talking to people about where I'm at and that kind of thing. And so I think that's why I try to share a lot of that with my clients, right? Like how we've got to kind of break through that, because that's a big part of our health and wellness, right? I think you hear a lot of people say, like, if you're not okay, they're not okay. And you can kind of see it. It's like when you don't feel not even necessarily at your best, but when you are struggling because you're so flooded with emotion and just everything going on, we start to feel it kind of get taken out on our family members, the kiddo, right? A partner, a spouse, or parent, or whoever's there for us.
Don't
Like you're
snitch
saying
on me,
something.
Lewis. Don't tell them what I said.
And even turning inward, like you're saying, sometimes it's even instead of even taking it out on folks, it's like noticing that we're not okay. So then we become more internal and then feel that the hill is getting bigger, right? It's harder to climb now, almost harder to put words to it. So I would say, honestly, that's the biggest factor for both me and what I work with my clients on is how are we going to build your community, and how are we going to help you talk to your community in a way that feels good for you. I think getting over the hurdle too of sometimes folks telling us that they did it alone, and kind of having to navigate that conversation, right? Like, well, I did it with, and I had 4 kids, and you're whoever was out working all the time, and it's like, yeah, and I really wish you didn't have to. We could get very defensive. So I would say those are the biggest things.
Awesome. I appreciate that. As you may have noticed, y'all, I'm putting a little like 3-minute timer on here because it helps me, and I think it'll help our panelists and
Yeah,
keep it to a
it
time.
did.
I'm telling y'all, make it visible. Make it visible. I try to practice what I teach. All right, Crystal.
All right. No, that timer definitely helps because I'm like, there's so much to say about this, but I'm gonna go off. I have some bullet points that I created. I have some overlap and then some other things that came up when I read this question. So number one, I would say the biggest factor for me was definitely the identity stuff, like the changes in identity. Who am I? Like who was I? Who am I? Who am I becoming? All the big existential questions. Um, when I read the question, I really thought about like what were the things that I was not prepared for that I feel like people don't really talk about because like Ashley was saying, the focus is so much on like initially on let's get pregnant or how do I go through my pregnancy, right? So the changes in identity, the sensory overload was huge for me. And talking about sensory, sorry if you can hear my chickens in the background. Chickens and roosters.
I thought it was her kids the first time I heard that.
No, they're my husband's new adopted kids. The sensory overload, right? And that goes with like, dude, like just the dishwashing, the poop, the, all the literally biological, logistical stuff that comes along with becoming a parent. I don't think anybody can truly prepare you for that until you are like in it. Um, the wounds that came up, right? Because parenthood is such a sensitive time, and anything that was pre-existing is bound to come up, right? Whatever you had that was already there, it's like parenthood will expose that. And along with that, I was just learning how to ask for help, relationship stuff, right? A lot of the stuff that you touched on. For me, a lot of it was around family dynamics because I have a big family. So learning how to navigate family dynamics and like how do I set boundaries while also asking for help, like you were saying, communicating with my partner, and also just like personally figuring out what was the stuff that came up that was unique to like my own upbringing and how it came up in parenthood. For example, like fear around separation because my parents were divorced. And I say that because everybody is going to have different stuff that comes up, right? So learning to identify that for yourself can be really helpful when you're figuring out how to look for tools or where do I even begin. Also, the state of the world, that's a big one. Like I had my kids so one of my kids during COVID, and raising them. I know we're running out of time here, but those are the biggies. Those are the big things that I would say mostly impacted my mental health in the first couple of years.
Awesome. We appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Louis.
Awesome. Really good stuff. So I think for me, I'm going to kind of try to answer the question fairly quickly from multiple perspectives. One, personally, and then what I see in my clientele. But for me personally, obviously us having experienced our first 14 months of parenthood, even after we had found out that we were now expecting, something that was sort of affecting me almost in a negative sense was the fear of the unknown, right? This is all brand new. It felt like completely uncharted waters. Um, and there was just so much information and opinions on every little thing, right? These days you have access to so much information at your fingertips, that it's hard to navigate and filter through what's the noise, what's actually absolutely critical, what do I even agree with, and what could I come back for if I found something that I felt was good but wanted to learn a little bit more about. And with that, it just felt like, we still got work. I mean, as a father and preparing to be a father and now father, like still understanding I have to provide, still want to make sure my wife wasn't doing too much climbing ladders while she's 6 months pregnant, preparing and nesting the home and all of these things. And it just felt like, kind of to Crystal's point, like that identity of how do I find balance in my new day-to-day in this new role that is ever evolving, right? And that was tough. But I think to Ashley's point, I think the positive factor here was the community, right? Having people that we can go to, family, folks, who are nearby, trusted friends, people you might have known for some time, even people that you work with that you feel that you're close with. I think being able to have that support, having a ear to kind of lean on in order to talk through things, learn from their experiences, but also not trying to compare your situation to theirs. I think finding that balance was helpful. And a lot of my clients, to be honest with you, I mean, we as a financial professional, money comes up, and kids cost money to raise, right? And trying to navigate through that it's a beast in a journey of its own. So really being able to offer literacy resources, just something foundational. We don't have to dive super, super deep into the complexities of what can be a financial jungle, but really being able to help people with the resources and then help them along their way by implementing those practical steps seems to make a big difference. And my last point, because money and mental health, they're linked, right? Somebody who's struggling with their finances it's going to find some way to impact your mental health, and the same vice versa. So whatever we can do to surround ourselves with good resources and take that baby step is, I think, absolutely advantageous.
Awesome. Thank you all. I appreciate, I just appreciate the range and the honesty, because I do think we need to hear different perspectives sometimes. So I appreciate y'all. We're gonna jump into question number 2, which is, if you could leave any words of wisdom for a new parent who is hoping to take their first or 30th step towards mental health and overall wellness, what would you share with them? This can be a tip, skill, etc. So we're gonna start a little bit different. We're gonna start with Crystal.
All right. I'm actually glad, because I'm like, I feel like I sounded a little doomsday, and I'm like, let me give some solutions to the stuff that I was talking about, right? So, echoing some of the stuff that you touched on earlier, this is what I have. Start small. Always start small. Like, we have a whole lifetime. There's no rush. You can't solve all the things overnight, right? Like you were saying, start small, let go of perfectionism or whatever ideas you thought it was going to look like or be like. Have compassion for yourself and try again, because life is going to keep lifing, right? Like, stuff is going to keep happening outside of just being a parent that's going to take you away from the journey, right? And so it's like a constant course correction. Like, okay, like this happened. All right, let's come back. All right, I'm off. Let's come back, right? And along with that, honoring the rhythms of life, because if you try to fight it, it's a losing battle. Do what works for you and your family. Again, with that information overwhelm and overload, like, people could tell you all day, but nobody knows what your day-to-day life looks like. Only you and your immediate family, or whoever is in your household or helping you on your caretaking journey with your babies, knows what's up, right? So you have to become really aware of that, and then that's how you learn how to navigate all this other stuff. um Cultivating your village is a big one. Social support. um Parenthood is not, parenthood and wellness especially, are not meant to be solo journeys. Like, it's as simple as that. So when we use words like community, village, anybody, your church, your family, the internet, right? Like, people that you meet on the internet, I do recommend at least try to connect, even if it's through video calls, but connect with people and have go to people and have a variety of people, because everybody is going to meet different needs. And prioritize your values, because again, with the overwhelm, when you're trying to figure out where do I start or what do I do, right? Especially like when you have those 5 minutes when your baby is asleep and you're like, wait, do I wash the dishes, do I eat, do I shower? If you know what your values are, and if you know how to identify, if you get really good at identifying what you need in this moment, the decision making will become a lot easier, because that could also weigh down on you. And if you feel overwhelmed, my recommendation, start with the shower. Go shower, and I feel like that's the greatest reset, and then go from there.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Showers can be so therapeutic. And then put your little playlist on. I'm here for it. Cool. So we're gonna jump to Lewis.
So yeah, I think for me, it's really, I guess the words of wisdom or words of advice I'd give is start applying what you do know and set some achievable goals, right? And commit to learning through the process. I love this concept and idea that we keep reiterating about baby steps. Because there's a saying that says there's really only one way to eat an elephant, and it's one bite at a time, right? Regardless of all of the problems, all of the things that you have on your plate to consider, reality is it's not going away, and trying to handle it all is also not going to solve the problem, right? So if we can chip away little by little by applying the information we do have access to, leaning on the relationships that we do have in our village, and not getting caught up in comparing and looking over to the left and to the right and feeling like I don't have enough because of X, Y, and Z. I think we might actually find that we have a lot more at our disposal that we aren't fully capitalizing on. That then also opens up doors and opportunities, conversations for you to build on that, right? To continue to build that momentum. I'm personally somebody who feels like I have to have all of the details before I make a decision. And they call that paralysis by analysis. It plagues people who are particularly very technical, the researchers, the people who feel like I'm really good at gathering and aggregating information. But now I have more information that tells me that I don't have enough information. And then now we can't make a decision, right? It's probably going to lead to the same end result as not having any of that information, right? If we ultimately don't make a decision. And so it's okay to make mistakes. We learn when we fail. It can be daunting, particularly when we know that our decisions are now impacting not just us, but also our little ones. But at the same time, I think that's where that community of support really, really shines through, right? Asking somebody, even within that community, a select few that you can personally connect with, to kind of hold you accountable and walk with you on that journey, to regularly check in. So it's not a random phone call where it feels awkward and all of a sudden we're trying to act like we've been talking forever, but being intentional with the relationships that we have, I think can make a big difference. And all of these concepts also apply when it comes to talking about things like money or your finances, right? Very, very sensitive topics, and it's easier to kind of ignore, and then let that thing compound and find out, oh man, I wasted a lot of time. But we have, I think, a lot of good things at our resource and our disposal. And we just got to take that big step.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to jump into Ashlei.
All right. Well, thank you. I think you both said everything that I would have wanted to say. So I was like, okay, I gotta kind of shift here. I think the biggest thing, beyond, I mean, like adding on to what's already been shared, is I think acceptance that it's hard, man. It's hard out here, and it's hard here in the States, especially. Um, it's hard to remember like who you were before and what you thought about all the parents, and like now being one and recognizing like how we get here and why there's sometimes a lot of lack of support um, for parents in general. So it's definitely okay to not be okay. You know, I think that's the biggest thing is recognizing that piece, and then moving toward mental health is I think both of you have said this already, or everybody, is the progress, not perfection. You know, like it's really, and it's okay to take one step forward, two steps back, because you're still bobbing and weaving, right? You're still moving forward overall, even if there's still a couple steps back sometimes. And so I think that that's really a big piece. And of course, building the community is always something that I focus on, especially now. I think a lot of the times we've been pulled away from our community, or we're not sure like how to interact. And so getting back to what we know, getting back to what feels good, and knowing it's okay, that people don't have to they don't have to be our everything, right? We can have different people kind of fill our cups in different ways. And I think that's been really freeing too. You know, this one friend doesn't have to be able to answer everything or support me for all things, right? I can have many different people that play those roles. Incorporating movement, that's a big tip, but movement that actually fits with what you're already doing. I would definitely say, like, if we're feeling flooded and overwhelmed, then it's more like park the car in that slot that you don't usually want to, and then you're walking like, you know what I mean, like the extra 10 steps to get there, right? Or if you're already cleaning, putting on your music that maybe you're like wiping a little harder, right? Like you're like, okay, I've got it. So whatever kind of is already fitting into it, because we've already got enough that we've got to do, so we don't want to make it that much harder. And then surrounding yourself with things and people that fuel you, right? I know it's important for us to stay informed, so absolutely, to whatever degree, but I know that now that I can kind of curate my life, if you will, or influence the algorithm a little bit, it's kind of like, well, then let's pick and choose what I'm looking at, and who's around me and for how long, and not being, yeah, just accepting that piece.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I thought that was beautiful. Just like hoping that something stuck. And the next slide is actually just consider for a moment what your next baby step for wellness is. We'll do a little sharing through chat in a few minutes. But remember to keep it small, keep it realistic, like keep it aligned with your values and your intentions, because I think that when you make values-based decisions, that mom guilt, that dad guilt is less likely to consume and take over, because you can always remind yourself, I know why I made this decision. Maybe this person over there doesn't understand, or that person doesn't understand, but I know why I did it. And I think that can bring you peace. So think about that. We're going to be jumping into some of the resources that we have as a team, which I will also be sharing all this in email on Monday. I did want to start off by reviewing this freebie document I have on my website, connectwithjaylee.com/freebies. There's a few freebies on there, but this one I actually made last year when I was in the middle of my postpartum year. I was about probably 5 or 6 months postpartum. And I was like, everybody needs to know this. And I took a postpartum Support International training. I was like, yeah, everybody. So basically one of these is a tool that you can actually check off things. You can print it, check it off, and just bring it to your doctor or your provider or whoever it is that you're seeing, in case you're feeling like, I don't know how to bring this up. I don't know how to talk about this, but it has some check boxes and some example next steps too. So this I kind of remixed from something that was already on Postpartum Support International, and I cited it at the bottom, but I thought it was really good. Perinatal mental health overview, just a brief overview over those 6 PMADs that I talked about. And this perinatal mental health care plan, that's the one where I go over like the NESTS plan. And then the Postpartum Support International, of course, it's a great starting resource. They have a lot of information, a lot of groups, free, accessible. They have a hotline. If you're in San Diego, there's also Postpartum Health Alliance, which also provides services and directory. I'm on there too, but like other events and stuff. And I think honestly, even if you're not in San Diego, because a lot of people are moving towards virtual, there's virtual services there too. This is my time to brag about myself. Just kidding. But this is some of the stuff I got going on. Make sure that you subscribe and follow on YouTube and Instagram. That's kind of like my main way to get content and information out there that's accessible. But you can also go to Connect with Jay Lee. That's kind of like my home base for everything that I got going on. And I also am starting an online community space. I thought that it just feels aligned with where I am right now, where every other week starting next week until the end of March, we'll just be coming together. No structure, just let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. And the pricing for the community is $5 a month for now. I'm really hoping that it's accessible, and it'll jump to $10 in February. But I think I'm just trying to put an alternative out there for anybody who needs it. So I'm gonna, and you can join my email list if you want to stay posted. I send those about once a month. So I'm gonna have Ashley, if you can talk about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I have the 2 things going for me. So definitely you can always check me out at Ashley_therapy anytime. And I have my website and everything there on Instagram. And then for combining my movement as well as the mental health portion, I'm a mindful movement coach. And so here are some of my offerings. I like to be honest about pricing because I think that that's really important in making decisions. And hopefully Lewis would agree with me. So there's no funny business around what it looks like to work with me. But always we can, you could reach out at any point in time at info@nurturedandmovement.com, and we can always figure something out, because that's how we build community. And that's how we stay connected to one another. So I'm just so appreciative that I've been able to be here. So thank you.
Yay, thank you. And again, just shout out, I am all about people following their passion projects. So yeah, put out to the world. Um, Crystal, can you share a little bit?
Yes. All right. So right now, my primary offerings are psychological services. So individual therapy, couples therapy. Through the Male Trauma Institute, we also do assessments. And again, I know the name is a little deceiving, but because it's males, but it's really for anybody who's looking for psychological services. That just happens to be the population that we cater to and that we are, specialized in working with. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm building and carving out my passion projects. Joanna and Ashley definitely inspire me. Something that I didn't talk about much and that isn't really on here is I love, for the past couple years I've been studying curanderismo, and so I've been figuring out how to incorporate that into my practice. It's probably going to be something that's completely separate from my psychological services, but of course, like I'm always going to integrate, everything together. But I'm hoping that sometime later this year or within the next year, I'd offer things related more to that, to curanderismo. So like limpias, pláticas, things like that. So look out for that. If you don't already follow me, I'm at Mindshifter 108, and you'll get more content that's related to creativity, spirituality, cooking, and movement.
And she could rap.
And I like, yes.
That's how I saw her page. I was like, I need to connect. The rap. Awesome. And then last but not least, Lewis, can you share what you got going on?
Yep. So it actually takes nothing other than time to schedule an appointment with me. We offer master classes where we talk about the importance of literacy and foundational concepts. We say we have something called 237, 2 realities, 3 concepts, and 7 money milestones. So even if it was only a 15-minute call, we have a lot of helpful information that we can provide. But it all starts with literacy, right? Then we can dive all into, okay, well, how do I put money away for my child? How do I navigate through insurance and health insurance, life insurance, long-term care? What are all the differences? Do I even need to know? How do I have more of my money working for me so that we don't have to work so hard for our money and we can spend our time focusing on the things that are really important, like our families, our passions, things that we really want to direct our time towards, right? And with that, we offer a variety of specific informational courses where we can deep dive and learn more about what it is that you want to specifically learn more about. And then thereby also implementing practical steps to follow through, right? Having the information is great, but if you do nothing with it, it's going to produce the same result as not knowing it at all. And so my contact information is here. There's even a quick little how money works challenge if you wanted to test where you're currently at with your literacy. It's 5 questions. It won't tell me the score, so it's all private, but you'll be able to kind of assess like, hey, where am I? Can I kind of understand where I'm currently at on my journey? And maybe there's some information that might be helpful to look at our finances a little bit differently so that we can build some confidence to come up with a plan to meet your needs.
Awesome.
So
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, he's legit. He's legit. I'm biased, but if I was going to talk to anybody about money, it's him. A fight, freeze pops up. Awesome. So yeah, I hope that y'all found something valuable. Again, I'm gonna set up the raffle really quickly. I'm gonna share y'all with y'all who's on the screen. So please let me know if I'm missing you. But also this is again donation based. So if you want to contribute a little something just for the cause, that's the link. And I'm gonna